Most hardcore. Some of them talk, but lacking in character. How can I relax when it's theft of innocence? The harmless are broken. Oh, what tragedy to meet death with the lost word unspoken. Hide it behind the foundations. Charity constructed house of euthanasia. Architects of house of cards remain hidden behind one noble cause. Extravagant facade masquerading as God. I don't buy it at all. I like the real thing raw. I tell the whole veil off. The lights on or off. I get mine either way. The stellar man in effect. I'll leave you free and breathless like true psychedelic acceptance. Worldview becomes transcendent. This midnight smoke is so high octane, paralyzing the presence. Alright, welcome everyone to the most hardcore news show on earth. It's This Week in Tyranny. I am your host, Conrad Rogas. Today is Friday, September 22nd, 2023. It is episode 42. And for this episode, it'll be a bit different than at least the last 10. It's going to be a deeper, more occult video. I'm going to switch up the pattern. I do this every now and again. I don't really plan it ahead of time on purpose. But as I do these stories, I don't pick and choose the themes. They always, unravel as they do. And I just talk about what is the biggest thing to talk about, the most important thing to talk about. And the news stories this week, honestly, they're not worth talking about. What am I going to talk about? The government shutdown? Am I going to talk about Merrick Garland testifying in Congress? Clearly, there are important things going on, right? There's wars continuing, natural disasters continuing. Every week I could talk about the abuse against children, the different stories I hear coming from Poland, my home country. There's one of these wild horror stories coming out every day that I could talk about. That's not what I'm going to do. Every now and again I have to do like a recentering episode. Why? Because you get in this loop of chasing the news story, talking about all the tyranny, and there's this kind of just chasing stories around, and we got to take it back to the center, and we need to return to principles like I try to do in every episode. But sometimes I just have to take some time, and we have to talk about something important. It was either going to be that, or I was going to talk about this story that I'll mention now. It's a woman who's suing a Louisiana police department because she was actually taken to this warehouse, unlisted, just a warehouse that the police know about, that was systematically used as like a unmarked interrogation zone, and she called it a torture warehouse, which is exactly what it is. And the community knows about this. The police have admitted it, and that is a story worth talking about. But I wasn't going to do that. I already made up my mind on this. What I'm going to talk about, and it's important, is about what I call the tyranny of tomorrow. So we're going to talk about anticipating the next big thing, the next collapse, the next major event. And I'll preface that a little bit more, but I just want to underline why this kind of episode is necessary and what that pattern that I mentioned in the beginning is. We tend to look at all the tyranny and all the corruption going on in the world, and it can get us into the state of like hypervigilance. So we're always looking out, we're always ready to fight, we're always looking for the tyranny, we're looking for it around the corner, and it can make us slip up in relation to other people, which we're living with the rest of the world, right? We cannot become isolated. So for that purpose, this episode is especially for that recentering, that coming back to the middle and really getting things clear on what we're trying to get accomplished here. What is the general idea? What is the big plan, and how we could counteract it? So we get stuck in the pattern of looking for the next big thing and even exposing the things that government is doing. It tends to become an endless loop of just either reporting or anticipating more control and more disasters and more events, right? So this episode is going to talk about some of those mental and emotional traps we get stuck in, and most importantly, how to get out of those traps. But the main focus is that trap that gets people concerned with the imminent disaster, the crash any minute now, the crash, the collapse, some sort of societal destruction, right? But I have to say, this episode is not a jab or a slight or disrespect to anyone breaking down those things, breaking down the symbolism, breaking down the predictive programming, and actually predicting or at least warning people of those events that are coming. These events are coming. So even though I'm making this video about that, it's kind of a counter argument, and unfortunately we are in a situation where the only counter arguments that are worth for me to make is actually debating with people I actually agree with, because with the general population there really is nothing to talk about. Somebody new to this, I've already lost them in that intro, so I'm talking to the people that already know what's going on, right? So I'm not disrespecting you guys, but I have to give my perspective. It's a unique perspective. People aren't saying this, right? I appreciate your work, but I have to add my piece, because you'll see, it's really, this voice does not exist in the world, so I have to do it. I love all the researchers, the content creators, and also just the regular people who aren't making videos, who are just doing their best to tell the truth and live freely as best they can, right? I love you guys, but I'm gonna give a quick summary of the basic idea before I go in depth, right? I've already given a long enough introduction. So the basic concept that I'm going to talk about is, don't watch and wait and worry about something potentially happening in the world. We all get stuck in this. We don't need to do this. You and I will build and create positive change in the world regardless of what they do. We're always worried about what they do, right? People always talk about how things are going to get worse, how bad they are, how much censorship there is, how people are gone, how people are dumb, how people are mind controlled. Yes, these things are all true, right? But all it's talking about what will happen tomorrow. And it's always this tomorrow. It's the tyranny of tomorrow is what I call it. And the whole concept of tomorrow is tyranny, because it's a statement of obligation and dependency. Like, you're dependent on what's going to happen. We're not. We don't have to be. There's no tomorrow. This is an abstract concept. There's no tomorrow. There's only an ever-present moment, a dynamic, ever-present moment. That's reality, right? Freedom exists in the today. It does not exist in the tomorrow. Tomorrow is slavery. Tomorrow is, I have to do this. I have to go to work tomorrow. I have to take, my child to do something tomorrow. I have to go send something tomorrow. But right here, right now, what exists? No enslavement exists right now. The current moment is where you are free. And that's why present moment awareness, Mark Passio says this, it's one of the solutions to fixing this world. It's present moment awareness. And in the present moment, there's always freedom. It's either freedom or it's a fight to get it, right? But what do people always talk about? What have they always been talking about in this freedom movement, in this truth movement? It's always the collapse, the coming societal collapse any minute now. Also, many people are talking about the election, right? The new election coming up. Will it even happen? This is what they're saying. Will it be canceled? What are they going to do? What kind of stuff are they going to pull this time? Will the democratic process be suspended? I've been hearing this, in person. And of course it doesn't really matter what happens with the election, right? But people always been talking about the collapse forever. In a biblical sense, the end of days, the end is nigh, and then it was Y2K, then anything, nuclear war, World War III, and every year it is said that the stock market is going to crash. It has to crash. It's going to crash any minute now, right? Now, is it eventually going to crash? Of course it is. It has to. It's a house of cards. The whole fractional reserve banking debt system is a house of cards. It's set up to fail. It's going to collapse. We know this, but it's supported only exclusively by the people's devout religious cult belief in government, in the value of government, and therefore it's paper money. And that's why the market has not crashed, even though it's based on nothing. It's in the negative right now, right? It's debt based, but it exists because we say it does. The people have agreed, because of how fiercely they believe in government. But all this anticipation of a collapse is not actually helpful, right? The truth is, a major earth-shaking event, a terrible, catastrophic event like that would actually help us. It actually will give us a better chance at freedom than we currently have. Because then the people would no longer be able to ignore global suffering. This is going on now. Global suffering is going on now. Right now, in all different parts of the world, in homes, within 10 miles of you, there are things happening to people that the earth should stop spinning and stand still until that problem is resolved. But it gets swept under the carpet. Nobody knows. In families, they hold it down. In churches and institutions, it gets stifled. It gets thrown in the closet, and nobody talks about it. But that's going on today. If we had a major event, we may have to reconsider the way we live life, right? And when you really think about it, only a slow descent into bondage could ever work. That's the only way we could ever really become fully enslaved, that at least, especially in America. It would not be that easy here. So they have to do it in a stepwise progression, and they have. Think about that. All of these big strong-arm takeovers, they've all failed, right? But this is the slow march, continuing, and the worst thing that could possibly happen is that there is no crash, that there is no big false flag, if there is no nuclear war, there is no gigantic events. That's the worst thing, because then this will continue. And right now, the descent, the people don't have enough will to reverse that. There's too much inertia driving the slow descent because of how long it's been in effect and how the people are invested in it. Think about what's been going on for thousands and tens of thousands of years. Slavery. It was always this patriarchal, authoritarian, collectively authoritarian, male authority type of society. Now it's changing. It's at least its appearance is changing, but it's still going to be slavery, and it's a slow descent to that total enslavement, even stronger than the old church hierarchy, right? Now, yes, traumatic events were always used to advance that descent, obviously. These big false flags are some of the most damaging, because that's, after 9/11, you got the Patriot Act passed. After the school shootings, you get the assault weapons bans passed. Yeah, granted. But no matter what happens, even if people predicted down to the day, the ruling classes always win with these things. Why? Because when the event inevitably does occur, even if everybody knows it was a false flag, the fear and the dependence is going to drown out the voice of truth. And that's what happens. The people, when you turn off their power, or even when they didn't know where their toilet paper was going to come from, you saw how people panicked. It is so easy to get the people in this herd mob kind of frenzy where they completely stop thinking and they completely will just hand their life over. Unfortunately, this is who we are. Now, why does this happen? Why is this? Because we're always a step behind. We're not leading the dance with these events. We're never leading the dance. We're too reactive. And we don't do anything until something happens, until a depression happens, or a crash, or a recession, or prices go up or prices go down. That's the only time we react. We never act, and this is incorrect. We need to build every day, building like an immovable force. We should be doing this now, right? We're always talking about what government is doing, what's going on in government, what's going on in the White House, what happened in the news. But what we're not doing, we're not exercising our will to build ourselves up, to make us harder to control, to make ourselves more independent, forming close relationships and tight communities with people who are doing the same. That's the solution. We should be doing that regardless of what happens. And yes, you can lead the dance. You control your own destiny. Not the whole world or anybody around you. You decide. You can decide to build yourself up and say you're going to build a better reality starting now, right? So then if you do that, if and when society collapses, which it will, we could just live without society. Because the fear is always what does the fear come down to? Even if somebody turns off the power, or the supply chain breaks down, the only real threat and the fear is what? Food shortages. Is that you're not going to have food and water. That's the only real threat. So then many of the preppers, and I support preparedness obviously, but people just seem to think that the solution is to just stock up on guns, stock up on food, and wait it out. And just wait there and just sit there with your gun guarding your house as this is going on. Now, sure, I support that basic self-preservation, obviously, right? But what's the end game here? What's the end game in that scenario where society collapses and you just are going to sit there in your house as the world passes you by, just guarding your family and your food supply? Because even with those guns and that finite amount of food, because it's finite, even if you have a 30-year supply, you've got an amount of food that's not increasing, and you have no way to multiply it. So you've reduced yourself effectively to an animal and a consumer. And really, if you're living in fear of other people and what they do, and just this non-stop zoo-like competition for not zoo-like, but safari-like competition for food and water, if you're living in that way, you're enslaved already. What's the point? That's slavery already. So the solution to that kind of situation, there is a solution, and it's to be self-sufficient and far enough from the zone where the threat of violence is pervasive. So you wouldn't make it where I live, on the outskirts of the city of Chicago, right? You cannot be self-sufficient in the city. It's impossible. You would have to be out of the danger zone, right? Like, you guys know we could grow our own food, right? Like, that's possible. We could grow our own food. There are people who know how to do this. We could just eat off the land and grow our own food and distill the water, which would give us the cleanest, healthiest water we could get. You could just distill it yourself. And I know that sounds primitive, right? That sounds primitive to most. But think about it. When you get a couple dozen intelligent people, inventive people together, and then when you get them out of the city and eating off the land and drinking distilled water, they'll actually detoxify from the pollution of the city and all the poison food and the poison water, and then they'll be able to breathe due to the cleanliness of low population density. You will see that technological advances would grow very quickly, new ones, like real new technology, new clean technology that's actually conducive to human development. That's possible. Don't think that living in nature means that we go back to being cavemen with no technology. That's not the case. This is a lie. We could be living in harmony with nature and still have high technology, in the sense that we're going to be inventive and we're going to build things that make sense. Like, this is possible. They've tricked us into thinking that technological advancement or advancement in general and just competence of existence, they've associated that with the system. But the system is not that. The system actually limits human progress, right? So how about that for a potential outcome of society collapsing? That sounds pretty good, right? Now, keep in mind that a societal collapse may not happen for a very long time or ever. It may never happen. It probably will I'd say there's a 50-50 chance that it never happens, because look how hard the social engineers have worked to build this society, this current system. And it's society and culture that's always enforced slavery and control, not the law of the jungle. It's been man's law. So why would they collapse it, right? Collapse the very thing that's been keeping them safe for centuries and millennia, and creating a Mad Max Wild West scenario where they can't control people, where they can't program them with TV and the devices. Why would they do that? But the truth is, both options are on the table, and they are ready for both of them. The architects of the world, the social engineers, they're ready for both of those. And that's what most people don't understand about the men and women that run the world. They are confident in their ability to remain on top no matter which path is chosen. That's them. Why? Why do they feel so confident? Well, they've mastered themselves, at least to the degree that they see mastery. Meaning what? Meaning a parallel alignment of thought and action. As they think, so they do. And a complete domination and atrophy of any emotion. So you got thoughts, emotions, and actions. They take the emotion, they bury it, they leave it alone. They are not concerned with emotion, because you can't have control if you're in tune with your emotions truly. So they put that to the side, and they align their thoughts with their actions, and they build. That's what they do. We wait for them to do it, they actually do it. Okay? So their form of mastery is technological advancement. It's social structures that exalt them and hold them up, sustain them, and extremely high intellect. That's basically their mastery, right? So then with that, they're confident that whether there's a war or drought or nuclear fallout or anything, they will reach the top again. Because why? Because they feel that they're better, more willful, more dedicated, more focused, and more driven than you. So they're not scared. They will collapse the stock market, or they'll just let it go as it's going and just wait 100 years longer. Because this is a plan. They know the metaphysical reality of this universe, so they don't need to do it in one lifetime. They're already on top. They already basically could get anything they want other than total control, and they're willing to wait a couple lifetimes to get that total control, because it is a greater force that they're serving. Yeah. So it doesn't actually matter how much national debt there is or how insolvent the banks become, because ultimately these men are the decision makers. This is what I can't get through to people. If they say they don't want the dollar to collapse, it's not gonna collapse. It doesn't matter how big the debt is. They make these decisions. It's their rules. So it doesn't matter what the technical analysis says or what the Bitcoin charts say. They could just keep bailing the banks and the exchanges out. And what's anybody gonna do? Are they gonna not take the money? They're gonna take the money. And it'll just keep going. And they'll just shave money off the top slowly. Because what's money to them? It's just a language. They just translate their plans through the language of money and just send a little more here, a little bit more over there, and the orchestra gets conducted around them to their will. That's the world we live in. But people don't understand that mindset. They don't understand that people have actually accomplished this, because we don't see any accomplished people in our circles. So we cannot even conceive of somebody who has those kinds of plans and the ability to realize them. Okay? And look, we already live in a world where corporations have merged with government, so it's a modern form of communism already. And that's what they can do. They'll just pull the right strings to change the prices, and it'll work, because the only real change that would actually change the economy, or crash it or anything like that, or collapse society, or change global commerce, it's just the actions that people take, and that's it. So if people can get manipulated into taking certain actions, then that's what will happen. But not because a currency crashed, but because people believe that that cascade of actions is the actions that they have to take. It's just what they do. So it's all on us, right? So I'm gonna assume that it's gonna be business as usual, as it always is. Why wouldn't it be? Why would I assume otherwise? And to assume it's gonna be anything else, and that's the tyranny of tomorrow. That's the whole idea, the tyranny of tomorrow. What's gonna happen? What are they gonna do? What are you gonna do? Right? And I want to ask, if things are never good, if things would never get any worse than they are right now, if things would just stay as they are right now, are you okay with that? Like, if somebody guaranteed you, okay, there's no collapse, gas prices will never get any higher, would you be okay with that? I think a lot of people would say, okay, I'll live in that world and I'll take my chances. I'm not. I refuse that. All the degradation and the neglect and the violence and abuse against children, especially children, animals in this world, I'm done. I don't care if gas prices go down to 99 cents. I don't care if I hit the lottery tomorrow. I'm taking action now. I'm not taking this shit. I will not just live in this world watching it continue this way. Okay? Every breath I take is an act of rebellion against control and domination. And I don't care what anybody else does. I don't care if I'm the only one. I'm going to awaken the human spirit anywhere and everywhere I go. If it has no effect, honestly, I have not failed, because I'm just doing my work. That's all I care about. Why do we wait? Why do you wait for another man's actions and their will? Like, why would other people's plans affect ours? Do we even have plans? What are our plans? Do you have any plans? I do. I'll tell you my plans. Here's my plan. My plan is to continue to live as an example of freedom and self-respect. I want to embody that. I embody that in the way I live, in the way I speak, in the way I look. I'm going to keep doing that. I'm going to be the epitome of practice what you preach. So you're going to see this every week. You're going to see what freedom and self-respect looks like, right? I'm going to continue to reach people however I can, reach people and form strong relationships with them when I do reach them, and continue to do that. I'm going to continue to work construction to keep myself sharp and ready, mentally and physically. And then if a totalitarian system were to come in, my plan is armed rebellion. That's my plan. And that's not going to change. I don't care if half the country blows up tomorrow. I'm going to continue doing that until I'm dead. And then I will continue to do it then, if I only remember. That's why most of my effort is focused on imprinting these principles into my memory, so that when I die, my spirit will have this encoded. And wherever it may go from there, the work will continue. Okay? That's the way to do things. That's what they don't want you to know. Okay? So that is the end of the tyranny of tomorrow. That's the end of that episode. That's the end of the material as I wanted to get into it. But now I'm going to finish it off with an occult breakdown. I said it was going to be, I'm not sure if I did mention this, but it's going to be a lot like episode 33, where I just discuss some deeper topics in general. And then I do an occult breakdown. I did a breakdown of the number 33 and what it means. I also am going to do one of the number 42. This is episode 42. That's a number that has a lot of significance as well. Honestly, I haven't been able to find a lot of information on this, right? So I was kind of hitting a dead end with this. What the number 42 means. In Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, the question is, what is the answer to the question is posed, what's the answer to life, the universe, and everything? And that answer is 42, just the number 42. And as I currently understand it, the significance of number 42 is, you could say 6 times 7, the 7 basically ports, the 7 chakras, the 6 that the human body actively contains, the 7th being the crown chakra, 7 times 6 or 2 times 3 times 7, a lot of mathematical properties. But that's not the significance of 42 to me. The big meaning of the number 42 is encoded in the pronunciation of it, like when you say it. And it's first saying the 2 digits, 42. Just sound it out. It's 42. This is the root word of things like fortune, of being fortunate. What is fortune? It's luck. It's the Fortuna is the Latin goddess of luck, right? Also, when people when you go to a fortune teller to tell you your future, right? It's things that are going to happen. So this number actually has a lot to do with the concepts in it. I didn't plan it this way, obviously, but this 42. But then when we say it, we say 42. And when you say 42, that is the same word as fortitude, right? Very similar to fortune, but it's different. Fortitude. What does it mean to have fortitude? That's strength, that's integrity, that's will, and that's courage, right? Fortitude is like integrity. It's when you have intestinal fortitude, it means you got guts, right? A fort is like a structurally solid castle that's like built for war, right? A fort. When your forte is your strength, anything forte means strong, it means loud. All these different words, because this all comes from Latin, right? Forte, force, fuerza, right? That's the force. And fortune and force, there's the saying that says fortune favors the bold, or fortune favors the brave, and this is the whole idea of it. And connecting that with what we just talked about, that's who has the fortune in this world, who has success in this world. It's the strong, it's the willful, it's the people actually taking action. That's why in Liber Haz, the first couple lines are, this is our law, the law of the strong, right? This is Thelema, right? The law of the strong. What did Aleister Crowley mean by that? That's what he meant. That basically not just Thelema, but the occult in general, all this knowledge, it's for people who are going to go out into the world and make things happen, not pray for things to happen, not beg for things to happen, or protest for them to happen. It's about the strength, it's about the fortitude to go and make your own fortune. So that's fortitude. That's the fortune you make in this world. That's the 42. That's what the 42 means. And isn't that the answer to life, the universe, and everything? Well, it is. It's just about the will, and that's why Thelema is what? Do what thou wilt. That's it. That's the meaning of that number. And fortune does favor the bold. The problem is, the people that have the most will in this world are evil people. So, yeah, we could expose them. We could expose all these people, but the way we're doing it is like we're under their boot. We're just putting our neck under their boot. But what we need to do is stand up, because these are actually weak people. They're strong in their resolve, right? In their dedication. But if we stood with them face to face, they will crumble. We are the ones with real strength. We, the people who have been oppressed for thousands of years, and really for longer than that, since prehistoric times. We've always been living under somebody's boot. We've always had Pharaoh's foot on our neck. And if we would just stand up, if we would just develop the fortitude, other words like forward, when you go forward, fortify something. This is all starting with the 4, and I don't want to go too deep into the numbers, but 4 means door. That's why you say you go forth out of the doorway, and the universe was spoken into existence out of the 4. And that's how it goes, because 4 is the heart chakra, and that's the origin of it. And like a fountain, it went in 2 opposite directions, and then it went up to the 7, and then you had the feminine, and then in the other direction you had the masculine. But the enlightened human being is not the 7 crown chakra as everybody says it is. It's really the sacred union of the 4, of the doorway, of meeting back together in that doorway and coming forth from it, and creating from that center, the center which is what? Care. That's the heart, right? That pumps the blood, that sends the electrical signals, the strongest electrical signals that the human body sends. It's not just the brain, it's actually from the heart. The strongest electrical the strongest current that any organ produces in the human body is actually the heart. So that's just a quick occult breakdown of those numbers, right? Now, is the number 42 really going to change the world? If you understand what I just said to you, is that, does that give you some type of special power over anybody? No, it doesn't. It doesn't. You don't have to really understand any of this stuff. But it comes down to, what do you do on a daily basis? And are you self-determined? Meaning, you are the one that are taking action in this world for you. Not for anybody else. Not to save the world, not to do anything. Are you doing the right thing because it's with self-respect for yourself? Because if you are, then it doesn't matter what events go down. It doesn't matter what government does, because if everybody would just act with self-respect, then we solve all these problems quite easily. I'm going to stop it there. I want to thank you for joining me on this episode. This was a different one. It may have been tough depending on who you are, but we'll get back to our regular scheduled programming next week, and I'm looking forward to seeing you next week on This Week in Tyrion.